Hello, everybody. Welcome to Standard Definition here on Boss Network. I'm your host, the link to everyone's past, Eddie V. Joining me for this episode, he is my Super Mario in this beautiful world of gaming of a network that we are on, Mr. Corey Dirrig.
Hello.
Yes.
And I'm here.
Course, and we have our special guest carting in a super style, in a super good way. The one, the only, Miss Stephanie.
Yay! I'm so glad to be back.
Hi. Welcome back.
Yay!
We're gonna talk about an amazing console.
Yes, this everybody is. It's going to be a good discussion with this one. Everybody, we are covering the Super Nintendo. And before we get into that, Corey.
Yeah.
Do we have any Patreon producers that we need to shout out?
Oh boy, I sure hope so, Ed. Let me tell you in just 1 second while I open the window because I totally forgot to do it again. So, everybody, if you want to support this show, as well as the other shows on the Boss Rush Network, you can head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/Boss Rush Network, where for just $1, you get Standard Definition and After Dark 2 weeks early, as well as the Boss Rush Podcast and Expansion Pass 1 week early. But there's more. If you subscribe to the $5 tier, you become a Patreon producer. What does that mean? Well, it means you get your name shouted out on this here program. So, without further ado, our $5 Patreon producers are as follows: Quentin Jackson, Rebecca Jewell, Adriel Munger, and my wife, Sana Dirrig. I want to thank all of our Patreon producers. I want to thank all of our patrons, and I want to thank all of our free listeners. Remember, all of our content is free, but if you sign up for Patreon, you just get it a little bit early.
Yes.
Yeah.
So everybody, let's dive into the Super Nintendo. As you guys can see,
Sega. Oh, sorry. No,
What?
I'm just
Get
kidding.
that blasphemy out of here.
I'm just kidding.
Shade. The shade.
Aww.
Oh, man.
I love the Sega.
I'm just kidding. This era was a Sega era for me. So, anyways, continue. Sorry, I just wanted to.
And it was a Super Nintendo and Sega and TurboGrafx 16 era for me.
Money bags.
Well, I'll explain to that about that later. The Super Nintendo Entertainment System, or SNES, commonly shortened to Super NES or Super Nintendo, is a 16-bit home video game console developed by Nintendo that was released in 1990 in Japan and South Korea, 1991 in North America, 1992 in Europe and Oceania, and 1993 in South America. In Japan, it is called the Super Famicom. In South Korea, it is called the Super Comboy and was distributed by Hyundai Electronics. Oh, Hyundai Electronics. I said Hyundai. Hyundai Electronics. The system was released in Brazil on August 30th, 1993 by Playtronic. Although each version is essentially the same, several forms of regional lockout prevent cartridges from one version from being used in other versions. The Super NES is Nintendo's second programmable home console following the NES. The console introduced advanced graphics and sound capabilities compared with other systems at the time. It was designed to accommodate the ongoing development of a variety of enhancement chips integrated into game cartridges to be competitive into the next generation. The Super NES received largely positive reviews and was a global success, becoming the best-selling console of the 16-bit era after launching relatively late and facing intense competition from Sega's Genesis console in North America and Europe. Overlapping the NES's 61.9 million unit sales, the Super NES remained popular well into the 32-bit era, with 49.1 million units sold worldwide by the time it was discontinued in 2003. It continues to be popular among collectors and retro gamers, and new homebrew games and Nintendo's emulated re-releases such as the Virtual Console, the Super NES Classic Edition, and Nintendo Switch Online, as well as several non-console emulators which operate on a desktop computer, such as SNES 9X. The Super Nintendo for America was purple and light gray. The Super Famicom was light gray and a little bit of dark gray with yellow, blue, red, and green buttons on this controller. It had six on it, so they had the top L and R button, and then YXBA on it. Yes. So, in Japan, it launched at on November 21st, 1990 for 25,000 yen. Is initial shipment of 300 units sold out within hours, and the resulting social disturbance led the Japanese government to ask video game manufacturers to schedule future console releases on weekends. The system release also gained the attention of the Yakuza, leading to a decision to ship the devices at night to avoid robbery. Then the Super Nintendo in America was a redesign of the Super Famicom in North America for $199, which is now equivalent to $400. It began shipping in limited quantities on August 23rd, 1991, with an official nationwide release date of September 9th, 1991. The Super NES was released in the United Kingdom and Ireland on April 1st, 1992 for 150 GB pounds, equivalent to 320 pounds in 2020. For the launch releases, the Super NES and Super Famicom launched with few games, but these games were well received in the marketplace. In Japan, only two games were initially available: Super Mario World and F-Zero. A third game, Bomb Bullseye, was released during the launch week. In North America, Super Mario World launched as a bundle with the console. Other launch games include F-Zero, Pilot Wings, SimCity, and Gradius 3. Just some quick tech about it. The audio subsystem is called the SSMP, which is a dedicated single chip consisting of an 8-bit CPU and 16-bit DSP and 64 KB of SRAM. It is designed and produced by Sony and is completely independent from the rest of the system. It is clocked at a normal 24.576 megahertz in both NTSC and PAL systems. It is capable of producing stereo sound composed from 8 voices generated using 8-bit audio samples and various effects such as echo. And the one of the big things that they marketed with the Super Nintendo when it first came out was the 32,768 colors that the system could produce, and they normally were showing Super Mario World to show that off. But yes, let's get into the Super Nintendo.
You know what? It didn't have blast processing
because it had Mode 7.
Did the top of your Super Nintendo say HD graphics?
No.
Like the Sega Genesis?
Man.
Did it have a volume button on the console for some reason?
With the slider. Yeah, my brother had the first version of the Sega Genesis when it came out.
Yeah.
That and Michael Jackson, Moonwalker, because Alter Beast was a pack-in.
Yeah.
Before they switched it to Sonic the Hedgehog, I think later on.
Yeah.
Man, y'all remember pack-ins in video and console systems?
I do. Wii Sports. My Xbox One came packaged with Assassin's Creed Black Flag.
My N64 came packaged with Wave Race 64.
Ooh.
Nice. I didn't get no pack-in for my N64. I had to buy Super Mario 64. Well, my mom did for Christmas, because that's when I got mine.
Nice.
So, Corey, so you did not have the Super Nintendo, Ed, did you?
Yes, I
Okay.
had Nintendo. Yes.
I did not, just full transparency, own one, but I am familiar with the system a little bit because I had a cousin that lived with me for a couple of years, and I used to visit my other cousin every summer, and he had a Super Nintendo. So I got to play some games. I'm familiar enough to hopefully be able to talk about it, but I'm not super expert or anything. But I had a lot of fond memories, a lot of great quality games, and I don't want to jump too quick into it, but like I like the Super Nintendo controller too. I
Yeah.
don't know, very classic.
It was, I think, when they jumped from 2 buttons to 6 buttons, and Street Fighter 2 came into play. That's when the system kind of really blew up in a sense because we were getting somewhat arcade graphics on Super Nintendo. So if you were getting the arcade or were looking for a game that was getting an arcade port, mostly it was Super Nintendo until a certain game that we're going to talk about a little bit later on because that one gave Genesis the sales, but we'll get to that one later. But I want to ask you guys, uh, when did you first play the Super Nintendo?
Well, for me, my friend growing up had a Super Nintendo, and we always hung out, and that was just the console that he had, and so, I mean, even though I didn't have a Super Nintendo, I was exposed to the Super Nintendo a lot. A lot of my friends had it. My cousin had one. A couple of my cousins had Super Nintendo. So, I mean, it wasn't it wasn't that I never played Super Nintendo, but I never got to sit down and play like the games that everybody loves, right? Like for me,
Mhm.
when I would go over to my friend's house, it was Ninja Turtles and Mario Kart and, maybe a little Super Mario World, and that was kind of it, maybe some Battletoads. I think there's a Battletoads game on there somewhere.
Yeah, Battletoads versus Double Dragon.
uh Magical Quest featuring Mickey Mouse was another
Hmm.
favorite of mine, at least. Donkey Kong Country. So I mean, there's a lot on there that I played there, but like I never played A Link to the Past. I never played Super Metroid. I never played Earthbound. I never played F-Zero. Any of these popular Nintendo titles, just never played them. So yeah, I mean, but Super Nintendo was in my life. It's just not at a consistent rate. So
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about you, Stephanie?
Similar. So because I didn't own it, I didn't get a consistent experience, and I could only play it when I was near family. And given the years that it was on the market and the games that came out, I was obviously on the younger side. Like I was 4, 5, 6, and in part why I never had a system and why my cousins never really would let me play, but kind of let me play because there was like Mortal Kombat and Killer Instinct and stuff like that, and those are the games they were playing. So yeah, I had some experience with those fighting games, primarily Street Fighter 2. I'm pretty sure wasn't Turtles in Time on that system,
yes, it
Yes.
right?
was.
So I recall that Super Mario World.
Uh, a lot of
Kind of,
Street
yeah,
Fighter and Mario Paint for me as well.
yeah. So a lot of the probably larger, more well-known titles, a lot of fighting games. I played way more fighting games back then than now, so that was my experience.
Yeah, my friend, he had his Super Nintendo, I think, on his birthday. And when it came to consoles, I would, sorry about that. When it came to consoles, I would end up getting a new one for Christmas. I had to wait till Christmas to get a new console. And so when Turtles in Time was already out, so that year that it was out, I ended up getting my Super Nintendo for Christmas. So I had Super Mario Brothers, and then I had Turtles in Time. But soon I started to get like Link to the Past, WrestleMania. Um, I was renting games like Chrono Trigger, um, borrowing games like Secret of Mana, uh, playing NBA Jam like with my brother. We literally went to my grandma's house to spend the weekend, and I brought my Super Nintendo over so we could play NBA Jam. Uh, And yeah, that's how I got into the Super
Nice.
Nintendo before I actually brought mine. Um, Definitely with the Super Nintendo, it had two controllers packed in with it. Like we said, it had Mario Brothers packed in it. But like the one thing I didn't know was that Sony sound chip being in there. Um, because not realizing that Nintendo asked Sony to make them the PlayStation, it was going to be called the Super Nintendo PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, when it was going to come out, but unfortunately, it didn't. All plans fell through, and they went to is it Panasonic, I think,
Yeah,
for the
they did the Panasonic. They went to Panasonic for their disc based stuff. Like
yeah,
like they were at E3 ready to present the Super Nintendo PlayStation, and somewhere between the time they got there and it was time to present, it fell through, and Sony didn't know about it, which was like why it was such a big deal at the time, right? Like, remember, one of Sony's execs came out and said they went to the PlayStation team and said, "You take this idea and you kill Nintendo." Like, they literally said, "You go kill Nintendo with this." And I mean, you look at the sales of the PlayStation and the Nintendo 64, they kind of did.
yes,
But
and
I think that was Nintendo's big mistake, though. Was like they Nintendo very much wants to control everything, whether it's good or bad. Some consoles you see it's good, some you see it's bad. But like holding on to the cartridge format with Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64, using the mini discs with the GameCube,
GameCube.
those were all decisions that kind of hurt Nintendo in a way.
But at that time, President Yamauchi was over Nintendo, and he was known to be a hard boss. So he made every decision that Nintendo every decision that was happening with the business, he was making it. And so with like because of his decisions, people saw a lot of success. But as kids, we didn't know the business size. We didn't know that Yamauchi was that kind of person until Iwata came in. Once Iwata came in, um, I think people started recognizing the change and the difference of Nintendo's business. And as much as people loved Nintendo, when they found out more about Iwata, it put Nintendo kind of in a more positive light. But as kids, we didn't know anything, the stuff that Yamauchi was doing, because we weren't focused on the business. We was more focused on the games.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
I mean, I think with the Super Nintendo, it didn't really hurt them that much, right? Because like, look, nobody was using discs yet, right? And so like you still had Final Fantasy 2 and 3, Chrono Trigger, Secret of Mana, all these third party games still supporting, right? Konami huge on Nintendo.
Yeah.
Capcom, obviously Street Fighter 2 was like a revolution for that console. So you still had a lot of third parties supporting the console, but then like when you moved from Super Nintendo to Nintendo 64, and I don't mean to make this all about, the Nintendo 64 and PlayStation kind of dominating, but you look at that and you say, oh, well, obviously the cartridges were super expensive. The disc-based platform was super cheap. It could hold more memory. You could run an audio track alongside the video, so you wouldn't have to run the same 10-second loop over and over and over again. Because I mean, remember, Nintendo songs, as catchy as they are, they're only on about a 10 to 20-second loop, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, if you played Tony Hawk's Pro Skater on Nintendo 64, those songs were on 30-second loops with no words, like hardly any words. I think only Superman is the only song that had words in it. So yeah, I mean, I think Nintendo kind of made a big mistake with that, not moving to discs, and I think a lot of that had to do with their grudge against PlayStation. And I think them being stubborn, and kind of forming this hatred towards PlayStation, even to the point of ditching discs for cartridges on the Nintendo 64, was very hurtful for them.
Yeah. Once again, Yamauchi's decision.
I get it. Like, you're a proud company. You've been in the game the longest at this point, right? Like, Atari's nowhere to be found. Sega is kind of like a nice challenger, but not necessarily overtaking the mind share, right? And then you screw over Sony, which is one of the biggest electronic companies in the world at the time, right? And
And it was weird because Sony was for people who don't know, Sony was making games for Super Nintendo and for Sega Genesis. And when they got into the Sega CD,
Naughty Dog's first game was on Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I forget what it was called, but I know that
it was like a volleyball game.
Oh wow! Okay.
But it was actually on. They did a game on Sega Genesis.
They did that too, but they had a game on Super Nintendo. Sorry,
because there was a code that you could put on the Sega Genesis version, and it turned into like a naughty game in a sense.
Oh.
It was Way of the Warrior. It was published by Universal Interactive Studios. It also came out on 3DO.
I remember that game. Yeah.
One of their other games was Keef the Thief, and it was published by Electronic Arts.
Keef the Thief?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
So, but before we get into the games, we got to talk about the accessories. Of course,
the multi-tap, the bazooka,
the multi-tap, the Super Scope 6, the Super Game Genie.
Game Genie.
Yes, I actually had the Super Game Genie. Got that for Christmas so I could play Secret of Mana, so I could cheat. And I remember just using it for that game, but then realized if I just really grind and take my time with it, I could just play this game by itself, in the right way. So I just used it for that, and then not really use the Game Genie for anything else. I never owned a Super Scope 6, but I did own the multi-tap to play Secret of Mana with my cousin.
I didn't own any of the accessories. I ended up getting a Super Nintendo later. I only have 6 or 8 games for it, but I didn't have any of the accessories. I actually, fun story, I actually thought the redesign was the only version of Super Nintendo. I didn't. So, I actually really like the redesign better. I think it looks way better than the original. But, yeah, I mean, when I went over to my friend's house, I wasn't really paying attention to what the box looked like. It was always like, oh, we're going to play Mario Kart or we're going to play Turtles, right? And so I never really looked at the box, I guess. And, I just don't remember that with the, the square or the rectangle reset and power buttons.
Yeah.
So I just thought the redesign that came with, I think it came with Mario All-Stars plus Super Mario World, which I have that cartridge downstairs, which is a super rare cartridge, I guess.
Yes, it is.
So if anybody wants to, buy it off me. Just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I think the redesigned console is actually my favorite thing that ever happened to the Super Nintendo.
Well, there is one major one. The Super Game Boy.
Yes, the Super Game Boy.
It allows you to be able to play your Game Boy games in color for some of them on your Super Nintendo.
Yeah, and didn't it have different color palettes based on
Yes.
So I know that the Game Boy Color, when you put the if you put Metroid 2 in, there was a specific color palette that you could choose that made Metroid 2 run in color, properly. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure the Super Game Boy had similar things to that.
Yeah, I remember because I had Link's Awakening
Hmm.
on for for the regular Game Boy, but I got also the DX version for Game Boy Color
Hmm.
to play, and I remember playing the DX version on the Super Game Boy, and it had different colors
Yeah,
to it.
yeah, man,
Uh,
what a cool thing. See, like even back then, Nintendo was thinking about how can we get our mobile games on TV.
uh,
Super Game Boy though was like it was super cool. It was super intuitive too, right? I mean, it was just a Super Nintendo cartridge that you plugged a Game Boy cartridge into.
Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah, and
uh, Stephanie, did you have any of the accessories or play any of the accessories?
No, so right now I'm like living vicariously through your memories.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Also you mentioned Mario Paint, Corey.
yeah.
Mario Paint contained contained the game, and it had a mouse pad, a plastic mouse pad with
Hmm.
a mouse that you could click in.
Hmm.
Mario Paint allowed you to make music. You used to be able to color and design with different
Hmm.
art materials, and then it had like kind of a coloring book to it
Hmm.
where you would be able to color stuff. They also had a mini game where you swap flies
Hmm.
to it. Uh, and it has probably one of the most danceable save music for in a
For
video game
who?
because
For who's dancing to the save music of Mario Paint, Ed?
dude, you cannot knock that soundtrack. So when you save the game, it goes do 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 do, and it's like a little house beat. It's like boom 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 boom. And I was a kid, and I would try to save off this so I could just hear the music and dance
Wow.
to it. I'm a house head. Uh,
Aw.
Uh, so there's also a pretty dedicated music community on YouTube that only uses Mario Paint to make their music, and it's really
hmm
cool.
Wow, okay. I have to check that out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I know a lot of bigger like chiptune, like I think Mega Ran used to use Mario Paint to make
yeah,
mixes of music, and like all these
yeah.
bigger kind of video game inspired musicians started in the Mario Paint YouTube community, and it's really fun to listen to like all these popular pop songs. I remember one of the first ones I ever saw was Party in the USA from Miley Cyrus, but it was all through Mario Paint.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Meow 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 meow.
Wow.
You will hear a lot of cat
Yeah.
sounds.
Yeah.
Uh,
Because, yeah, a lot of cat music too.
they did someone did Star Wars main thing, opening
Yeah.
thing. Someone did Ariana Grande's. And that's kind of how when you look at uh their cardboard series for Switch, um, when Ariana Grande did her single for No Tears to Cry, using that was kind of almost the same way it was for the music section in Mario Paint for it. So, um, but everybody, we're going to get into there's also one more controller. I forgot. There was that joystick controller. I think that was kind of almost for fighting games that you could use for it. But like that was kind of where the main was. There were some third party controllers, but we don't really need to talk about that or anything. Uh, it's time. I think it's time for us to dig into the games for
Hmm.
the system because some of the games created not only evolutions for a lot of genres, but kind of really incorporated the arcade style of gaming, and really allowed one company to actually put their games on if you could not get their system, and I will talk about that in a second. But kind of let's start with Super Mario World, the pack-in game. What was it about Super Mario World that you think sold you on the Super Nintendo? Stephanie.
Goodness. Can you come back to me? Because I'm just like trying to form my thoughts. Because like all that's coming to me is nostalgia, and I'm like, I can't just say nostalgia for nostalgia's sake.
Well, I know definitely for me is going up, and instead of going left, I went right. And it was finding out who Yoshi was, meeting this new character. And then it was just seeing how he works and eating the first green shell, spitting it out while running and hitting all of those turtles until I got that to that number one. But then you dig deeper to it, you seeing Mario's finally have new superpowers. You know, he had a feather that makes him fly. And there's a level in there where you got to stay in a line to collect all of these coins. So it's him flying. Um, Once again, fighting the Koopa kids, but also fighting like mini bosses and getting to those lands and everything. Being on the fence, hitting it and switching to the background to punch turtles and everything. It was really it did to some of the worlds. You got like a forest that was a maze that would put you make you go in circles. And there were times that you had to beat a level at a certain time. Secret interests. Choco Mountain. You know, a mountain made out of chocolate was a level and everything. And it just had different paths on how you got through that game. It had the exclamation marks where when you get to it, these certain color blocks will go into the level and you'll be able to progress. Now, if you got the yellow and green one, the yellow would give you mushroom and the green one would give you a feather to fly.
You know, you mentioned the feather. Now I can start somewhere. I always thought it was the coolest thing, but maybe because I was so young, I just constantly just ended up killing myself every time I flew. I just like, I don't know, I couldn't control it. I did think it was very cool. For me, I also like the fact that, you know, well, because of my memories, I mostly did multiplayer, and that's why I was very partial to Luigi because I'd play as Luigi quite often. So, and also like my love for Yoshi too, and being able to ride Yoshi.
Yes, special Yoshis would do special things when you eat different shells. Like there was one
Oh
shell
right, yep.
that would make you fly or like kind of make them special. And then of course there was the ditch Yoshi gameplay where in order to get to a secret level, sometimes you would have to go underneath the goalpost, but you needed Yoshi and you would have to jump off of him and ditch him and everything. That was a heart wrenching thing, but sometimes I had to make the sacrifice so I could progress. And I'd be like, oh, I can get Yoshi another time. Well,
did you ever see, there's a YouTube channel called How It Should Have Ended, and they usually do like movies and stuff and like, oh, this movie ended terribly, so this is how it should have ended. But they did a really funny Super Mario World video that was only like 30 seconds long, and it was Mario ditching Yoshi at the last second, and like Mario had like a little tear in his eye, like what do I do, and then he jumps off, and then you see Yoshi just fall in a pit and flicking Mario off while he's falling to his death.
Oh wow. Definitely jumping on Yoshi, it would change also the background music. So you would just be able to just walk around, hear the light fun music, but then when you got on Yoshi, it add bongos, it add percussion to it. And it'd be like, and every time that happened, the soundtrack still having this melody, but just add that percussion to it. It was really nice. Also, being able to have Mario run up on walls, he will run like if you hold the Y button for him to run. He would run through a triangle and it would take him up in the mall. And what was cool, his animation was that he would have his hands out like he's about to fly. Uh, any more any more uh anything else about Super Mario World?
Well, From
Stephanie?
a nerdy standpoint, doing some research ahead of time and confirming everything, Shigeru Miyamoto was a producer and Koji Kondo was the composer for Super Mario World.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm obviously very attached, to those people. So it's nice to kind of, because when I was a kid, I just focused on trying to play with my cousins and not like, oh, who created the art and who's the mastermind behind this franchise. But it's nice to look back and be like, oh, wow. So Miyamoto was in here and Koji Kondo was there. So I love that aspect.
Yes. So, and it also had the secret world, Star World, where you be able to connect the lands, make the star, and then go to another world. And if you beat it, you turn the turtles' shells into pumpkin heads. So you can also like change it. Now, the final battle of it, Super Mario World, and you guys can play this on Switch Online if you are have subscribed to it or NSO Online. That you fight Bowser in this like little helicopter, and he would throw out these robot mechanic turtles that you had to hit and throw up so it could hit Bowser and everything. And it was an interesting boss fight to have. Did you ever fight him, Stephanie?
I was never that good. And now I'm sad that that's not part of Nintendo Switch Online because, part of me is
It
like,
is.
oh, that part. I thought you said you can't play. Didn't you say?
It's on into the Switch Online,
Oh, it
so if you want,
is,
yeah, the game is on there, so you can play the full game on Nintendo Switch Online.
including the final boss.
Yeah,
Okay. All
it's a
right.
whole
Never
game.
mind.
Yeah.
Good. I can still redeem myself and live through my childhood because that's the thing about probably all these games, Ed. When I was younger, I was not a good gamer. I'm technically still not a good gamer. I'm lucky. I'm pretty sure I only got through like the first dozen levels, and that's kind of where it ended. But I would replay those same levels.
Yes. Now, because since Corey is
Oh
away,
yeah.
let us get into the game and not Super Metroid, everybody. The Legend of Zelda Link to the Past. This game not only put Link back into 2D, but it almost literally changed the Zelda formula in a sense because it was more open world. Um, there was different weapons, but there was also secret side quests that if you did something and got it to the right person, you were rewarded with maybe another one. But then you could go and find a fairy, pay some money, throw in your sword or throw in your bow or whatever, and it will upgrade. You know, it did. We haven't even gotten to the dark world.
Yep.
Ah, Stephanie, start us off. Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past.
I don't know if I could do it justice. Just it's just so at the time it's just so bonkers. When you find yourself in this different like almost like a mirror reflection of the world, and
Mm-hmm.
you're a pink rabbit, right? And it's just like
Yes.
trying to figure out, what's going on, and all the enemies look different. Everything's all different. And I think not to completely sidestep it, but I also got to play A Link Between Worlds, which is people call it a
Yes.
spiritual successor. I don't know. I kind of almost find it just like another reimagining of it. And they also did a great job with it too. And I don't know. Sorry, I'm just like all over the place. What I really loved about Link to the Past was their level designs.
Yes.
Absolutely their level designs. So, did you
Yes.
have a favorite level?
Of the Dark World.
Yeah.
I think it's the third dungeon where you gotta rescue that princess and take her to the room where the light is at, and she turns into the boss monster.
Oh.
I thought that was one of the best levels in that game. That was so creative.
Mhm. Mhm. Was I'm trying to remember if Skullwoods was in the dark world, right?
Yes.
So yeah, so Skullwoods I remember being like a favorite of mine. Just everything being kind of all maze-like and creepy and spooky.
Which is funny is because you could skip half of that dungeon.
What?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, I
If
went my
you
whole life not knowing this.
Yeah, I think there's a way you might have to look it on YouTube, but I remember because you had to go underground, but also go topside to get to different parts of the dungeon. And so, if you were
Uh,
able to get through some points and not fall on the top part, you would be able to get to areas that you're not supposed to access yet.
mhm.
And you can fall down with extra keys, get to it, and finish that dungeon, or and get that special weapon there, or that special item.
Yeah,
It's an interesting dungeon
yeah.
for that game.
Turtle Rock was kind of fun for me. I mean, the boss was kind of, it was okay. It was like a turtle dinosaur with like two heads or something
Yeah.
like that. I'm trying to see. Three
Uh,
heads? Yeah. I'm
the
looking it
one
up right now.
one of the most frustrating bosses in that game was that little worm thing that's spinning around, and you have to hit the tail.
And yeah, if you get knocked off, right,
Hmm.
you'd have to like go all the way back up. Oh, I'm trying to remember
And you have to redo that whole fight.
exactly. Oh my goodness. It was frustrating. I'm trying to recall what it looked like in the original Link to the Past versus A Link Between Worlds. But the one in the Link Between Worlds, it looks like a hamburger worm. It looks like a burger.
That's yeah, and same way that it looks in Link to the Link in the Past.
Mhm.
It does.
But and speaking just high level of it, next to Ocarina of Time, Link to the Past is probably the most cited, like people's first and beloved
Mhm.
Zelda and game that got them into the franchise. Not Zelda 1, not that that's not good. Not Zelda 2, but Link to the Past. And I think that's really important to notate. Like for me it was Ocarina of Time, right? The only exposure I had to Link to the Past was through my cousins or me playing it after the fact.
Mhm.
Because technically Ocarina of Time was really my first true personally experienced Zelda game. But I can see the appeal to it. I because I recall it's also a little less structured than other newer Zelda games that are more linear.
Yes.
You could go wherever, and I just think that just adds like a very fresh take on the Zelda franchise. But anyway, I'm just talking in circles. I just think it's a very important game, not just for the franchise, but definitely for the console at the time as well.
Yeah, and it was kind of cool that you were able to see some areas that it had a top part and a bottom part, and if you sometimes fell to the bottom part, you were like down a level
Hmm.
sometimes.
A lot of verticality for sure.
Yes, and of course it has one of the saddest moments. You know what I'm talking about, Stephanie.
You're gonna have to remind me. I'm sorry.
So it deals with a flute.
Oh. 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 You could talk about I don't think I could talk about it. Oh my
So
gosh, you just reminded me of now I'm like all sorry.
so there is a,
Yeah.
a boy who like he has a flute that could traverse him to like different parts of the land. And there's one part where you do the quest, and at the end of it, he's on this tree stump, and he turns into, I believe he turns into wood. I think uh
My goodness, I totally forgot about that.
yeah, because
That's
it like
dark. Yeah.
yeah, because um it was somebody's son, and he
Yeah.
ended up, and the son ended up like turning into wood and everything, and
Yeah, I
you
think
kind,
the dad was in like Kakariko or something, right?
I think so, yeah, because the animals were like moving away, or the birds and stuff. Like
Mhm.
it's been a while. Me and Corey do have a retro recap of that whole game. We literally streamed the whole game. So everybody could go to Boss Rush and watch it, and that part is included.
My gosh.
But it was I think that was when the Legend of Zelda and the Nintendo and Miyamoto was like really trying to tell a story in the
Story, yeah.
Zelda franchise.
Mm.
It was more than just the Triforce, because it was like, stopping Ganon, but it was like saving these seven maidens. But
Yep.
I think well, I think Zelda being the eighth. So it had that Sleeping Beauty kind of style with Zelda at the end. I think. Was she hmm. I have to now I need to replay that game. But yeah, it was, and then of course it had the save feature and everything. But it allowed you to capture your fairy with the net and put them in a bottle
Yeah.
to say. Um, I think this is where you find out about get like in the silver arrows before Zelda got those arrows, because you needed those arrows to defeat Ganon.
Right, yeah. What did you think about the antagonist? I mean, it's still Ganon, right, in Link
Hmm.
to the Past, but you have like that secondary bad guy, Aghanim. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right.
I think so.
Aghanim, yeah. So what did you think about Aghanim?
I thought he was good. His fight wasn't too hard or anything,
Yeah.
but I definitely when me and Corey played it, I had all my hearts full. I had I had all the bottles and everything, and I filled it up with the best potions and stuff. So I went in fully prepared to fight him. Um,
Yeah, he wasn't too bad. I liked the concept back then. I mean, nowadays, Ganon working behind a puppet, can sometimes backfire. Like I see that with Zant and Twilight Princess. But I think it worked really well for Link to the Past.
yes, it's still a classic among a lot of gamers, and not just the Zelda community. It was um literally, even when like Iwata passed away, that people were paying tribute to him using Zelda fan art and stuff. There was a lot of artists um using Nintendo games to have memory of Iwata, and Link to the Past was one of them. So yeah, go check out our virtual playthrough on our YouTube channel, everybody.
I'm gonna have to check it out. When did you guys do that?
A long time ago, I think before even Boss Rush even existed.
Yes.
Wow. See, this is the thing. I have a lot of fond memories of these games, but like, Ed, as you're bringing up stuff like that, I kind of forgot about, like the boy with the flute, and I totally forgot about the whole turning into the tree thing. You had to remind me. Now I'm like, I need to go back and play it to have my heart broken again.
Well, I think. Sorry, by the way, my children were still awake and my wife needed assistance. So
How dare you be a parent?
I know.
Corey? How
Sorry.
dare you?
Oh, darn parenting. But I think when we kind of have been talking about somehow bringing the retro game show back in a way that's meaningful and not, like, because we know what we're doing now as opposed to then, and because some of the episodes don't have audio, some of them only the game is playing, some of them only we're talking, and like it was an experimental time, we'll say. But I think when we need to do those games again because of that, first of all. But second of all, I want to make sure, people who like those games are able to come on and talk about them and, share their memories and that kind of thing. So,
And also be able to give me claps when I do good.
yeah, that was a thing. Because on the Switch Online, like if you press the right stick on a two, like if you guys are in the same lobby or whatever, if you right click, the hands clap. Every time Ed died, I would clap for him.
Yeah.
It was funny.
So there is an episode. I think Corey still has it up there. You was playing Super Mario Brothers 3 and you die, and
That
you can
episode does not exist anymore.
All you can do is just hear me howl in the background.
Okay,
cracking up.
Here's the thing, man. We were playing Mario 3. It was going to be one of our next playthroughs, and I wasn't playing with an NES controller, and the Pro controllers are not great for platformers, and especially NES ones, because the buttons are all backwards. And I pressed the wrong button, and I didn't jump. And I fell in a pit. The very first pit in Super Mario Brothers 3.
And my soul left my body as I laughed.
It's true. I've never seen Ed laugh so hard in my life.
So, Uh, well, let's get on to another third major game. Along with this, Super Metroid. This was the game that really was able to tell a story and without using cinematics or too many words and stuff. Um, just the level design, um, the powers, and definitely one of the most memorable fights and scenes in the Super Nintendo history is definitely against Mother Brain. Now I know Corey, you didn't play it, but we did also retro playthrough of that. Stephanie, did you play Super Metroid?
I did not. I must have said this when Metroid Dread came out last year. That's my first Metroid game. Believe it or not. So, and I did love Metroid Dread. So, like, someday when I have time to tackle my backlog, Metroid is a franchise that I want to go back to because I missed out on that franchise all these years. And I started with Dread. I'm like, I like this. So eventually I can go back. I mean, but I heard it was really hard, or is that just because I suck at video games?
No, it's hard. Don't listen
Okay.
to Ed. He's good at anything 2D platforming. Do not take his opinion. It's hard. No, Ed, it's hard.
No, I'm just
Metroid Dread is hard.
Think about it. No, so you're talking about Super Metroid.
I know, but they're all hard.
Difficulty kind of scares me.
So Corey never played it, but we went through the game. We had a great discussion about it. I remember playing this game at my grandma's house on my cousin's Super Nintendo, and he had the strategy guide to it. And I would not, when I needed help, I would look into the strategy guide, but I beat the game before he did. So I knew how to play it because I was going over to my grandma's house to play that game and get through it. A Super Metroid. And I really can't say more because, Stephanie, I don't want to ruin anything for you. But it is such a great game, and it's a classic, and that's why you probably will see it, why it's number one for greatest game of all time. If it's not Tetris or it's not Mario 64 or anything like that, you would definitely see Super Metroid on that list for it. Because it was something, to see how they were able to take that series and like really make it explorative, and the music and stuff, and getting the powers. That's why so many people speed run that game, because they're able to break it so easy. So that's going to be just a little bit of Super Metroid. Everybody, once again, it's on NSO, so you guys could play that.
I was going to say, when did the term? Well, I know Metroidvania is combined with, Castlevania. Like, when did that term start popping up? Like, around what?
Symphony of the Night, I think. When Symphony of the Night was released, it was often compared to Super Metroid, and then that term just kind of came from there.
Okay.
Well,
because I mean, if you like the NES Castlevanias, except I think Castlevania 3 to an extent might have been, but like they aren't really like a Metroidvania. They're just like action platformers. And Super Metroid really took the kind of like maze idea and unlocking new areas with items that you find and backtracking and stuff. That was really the first game that did that. Metroid 2 is pretty linear. Metroid 1, to an extent, is pretty linear, too. I mean, there's some backtracking, but Metroid 1 is pretty linear.
Okay, so it was this one then. It was the Super Metroid that it was referencing. Okay, because I was like, I think that's what I've learned, but I could have been wrong.
Yeah, so there was a show on the network called One Up. OneUp.com, that was with Electronic, Ziff Davis and EGM. And there was a show called Retronauts. And they were talking about Metroid and Castlevania Symphony of the Night, or Super Metroid and Castlevania Symphony of the Night. And that Jeremy Parrish made that term of Metroidvania to talk about those games. So that's how that term came up, and everybody just turned it into a genre and used it. The difference is that Metroids don't have RPG elements, where Symphony of the Night does. You know, because you got and then because it's so melee based, anything that's shooting would be considered more as a Metroid game. But anything that has melee and style under the Castlevania banner, that would be like the Vania part of that genre, of that description. So it's an interesting story. So that he ended up coining the term and stuff. So yeah, because Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest follow in the reigns of Metroid, but it was Castlevania Symphony of the Night, like Corey said, that helped make that turn and everything. So I think we should jump into some third party. I would have talked about Star Fox, but I don't think you guys played enough of Star Fox.
No, let's talk about Star Fox, because that's a pretty important game for Super Nintendo, because it was really the first kind of 3D we saw, right? I mean, we had Mode 7 stuff, right, where we saw like the tracks and landscapes rotate depending on where we were going, right? Like you think of F-Zero specifically, or Mario Kart specifically, or even like the some effects in A Link to the Past. But like this was like an on rails 3D shooter, and okay, maybe it ran at like 10 frames a second and it was slow, and but for the time running on a Super Nintendo, that was incredibly impressive.
They introduced the FX chip with it.
Yeah.
Corey, I know we played Star Fox 2, but did you play the first one?
I've played a little bit of the first one, not enough to like say I beat it or anything, but like
yeah,
I think Star Fox 64 is kind of like the realization of what Star Fox was, because that first mission is the same. It's the same mission. You know, you start out flying over the water, you kind of glide through these archways and trying to get the rings and the bombs and everything right. And so it's an interesting prototype to what I think Star Fox 64 ended up becoming, but it's just an impressive feat to have something like that running on Super Nintendo hardware. And I know like you said, they had the FX chip and added hardware into the cartridge and did all these crazy things to make it work, but it worked, and incredibly impressive for the mid 90s for sure.
80s, yes.
Especially because it was still like we had heard rumblings about the PlayStation, right? But like we hadn't really seen anything about the PlayStation yet. And this was really the first kind of 3D experience, and it was unique and cool and worth looking at from a historical perspective, I would say.
Yes.
Star Fox 2, however, though. Boy.
That was an interesting day on our vacation.
Yeah. That video is also up on our YouTube channel.
Yes. Stephanie, you didn't play Star Fox, correct?
I haven't. My first Star Fox and my only Star Fox was Star Fox 64. But I did take a look at the images while you guys were talking, and I can see exactly what you're talking about, Corey. Like, these must be screenshots from that first level, and it's literally like almost like the backbone of what Corneria or Level 1 was for N64. And I don't know, I just feel like for Nintendo, this seems like it was pretty I don't know if groundbreaking is the right word, but just the foundation for an amazing franchise. Too bad it really didn't go very far.
I mean, it was groundbreaking. Like, that's the thing, is like somewhere between Nintendo 64 and GameCube, like Nintendo stopped being technologically groundbreaking and started moving into their, you know, kind of what we know them for today is weird, wacky, innovative, sometimes great, sometimes not so great. You know, but like back then, like, you know, obviously their big selling point for Nintendo 64 was 4 players and 64-bit technology, which was insane, because we used to measure everything by bits. How many bits does it have? 32, not enough. So, which is like, where the Sega 32X came from, and obviously PlayStation kind of capitalized on the 32-bit thing with PlayStation, and Nintendo had the 64-bit cartridges, which were amazing, and even Nintendo had that RAM expansion pack, right? Because that's incredibly forward thinking at the time. So yeah, I mean, Nintendo used to be moving the technology forward until discs were introduced, and then they had to find a new way because they're afraid of round lasers, I guess. I don't know.
Well, definitely, we had Donkey Kong Country and Killer Instinct. And Killer Instinct is a very interesting thing because in the arcade, Midway, Rare designed the game, but Midway did the publishing for it along with Nintendo, and it was their first M-rated game from a first party.
Which is crazy to think that Midway did that. Which is why, like, side tangent, which is why when that the Warner Brothers is, they're trying, rumor is they're trying to sell their gaming division, which is why Microsoft should totally buy NetherRealm so they could do a Mortal Kombat versus Killer Instinct game, which would be hilariously awesome. Anyways, sorry, continue.
And that leads us also to Donkey Kong Country.
Yes. An impressive game visually for the time.
But hard as ever.
Yeah, because the platforming sucked. It wasn't Mario, right? I mean, I think the thing with Donkey Kong Country is that it was super visually impressive, right? They used the 3D models and kind of layered 3D backgrounds on top of each other to give you that illusion of 3D, even though they were just layered 2D images. But and they used the 3D models of Donkey Kong, and kind of it's similar to what Mortal Kombat did, right, with their real people images that they used to create their fighters. And it was super impressive, but the controls, especially for Donkey Kong, were not great. I still think Donkey Kong Country 2 is probably the best one. I think Dixie is probably the best playing character out of all of them. But yeah, Donkey Kong Country is something I remember. That was the game that made me question if I wanted a Nintendo 64 or buy my own Super Nintendo. Was Donkey Kong Country.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Wow. Because it looks so good, and like I knew Nintendo 64s were going to be hard to find. Super Nintendo had all these great games, and it was super cheap at the time. I think the summer before Nintendo 64 came out, Super Nintendo was like $100 or like $120 packed in with Mario, with all the Mario games, and Toys R Us was running a deal where you got Donkey Kong Country and Super Mario All-Stars plus Super Mario World. Like 6 games for $120 with the console was incredible.
Yes.
So,
did you play any of them, Stephanie?
Killer Instinct. I mean, I saw my cousin, again, I always reference my cousin playing Donkey Kong Country, but for whatever reason, I never played that. But Killer Instinct, oh yeah, I really got into that. I was always trying to prove myself to beat them. A lot of the creatures kind of frightened me, but I've always played as Orchid.
Yeah.
And I struggled learning the combos just because of so infrequently I played it. Once I got used to a combo, the next time I see them next summer, I'm like, crap, I need to practice with it again. So it's like a button mashing awesomeness. And obviously my parents didn't know, or else they would not let me play that game. Because now that I think about it, I'm like, at my age, maybe I didn't need to play it, but good memories with Killer Instinct. And yeah, that's the other thing I liked about it. It gave me those arcade vibes. Like they brought the arcade home.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that was definitely Street Fighter for me, right? Like not that I played a lot of Street Fighter in the arcades, But my friends, I had Street Fighter for Genesis, and my friend had it for Super Nintendo, and it was definitely something that we kind of fought over, quite literally sometimes, because the Super Nintendo version that he had didn't let you select the same character, right? Like,
because he had World Warriors.
Mhm.
That's the first one.
mm-hmm.
And then Genesis got Championship
It was
Edition.
the first fist fight I ever got in, was over that game.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, one of my best friends growing up, and like we fought over Street Fighter because we couldn't be the same character, and I wanted to be Blanca, and he wanted to be Blanca, and we got in a fist fight in my and he brought his Super Nintendo over to my house to play, and we got in a fist fight, and he ended up taking his Super Nintendo and walked home.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't have that problem because guess what? I wanted to play as Chun-Li, and at that time, they were like, all the boys like, I'm not playing as a girl character. But of course, she's like one of the best characters nowadays. But back then when we're all juvenile, they're like, oh, you're a girl, so you'll play as a girl. I'm like, good, because I think she's badass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely when Street Fighter 2 Turbo came out for Super Nintendo, because Genesis got the Championship Edition.
That's what I had, was the Championship Edition.
Yes.
Came in a green box.
I mean, I love the franchise so much. That's what I got, that jacket, that bomber jacket, Street Fighter 2.
Yeah. That's
yes.
Cool. Are we excited for Street Fighter 6 while we're talking about Street Fighter?
So we discussed this on Crossroad.
Did I see that correctly? That it's an open world game?
It has some open world bits between fights.
Okay.
Stephanie knows how I feel about Ryu and Chun-Li. Love them. The two new guys look like some characters from Final Fight that I missed out on. Like, what are these character designs?
I saw them reveal Ryu, and I almost texted the writers chat. So I'm gonna get Ed some tissues because he's drooling.
Ryu is daddy. Like, he is my main outside of Akuma.
Yeah.
So, that's Street Fighter. Well, we can get into some third-party games because definitely, I know, Corey, you want to talk about this one, so let's get out the way. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time.
Yes.
That was the leading game from Konami.
Yeah, I mean that was the game. I've probably beaten that game. Not even kidding. Played through that game all the way with my friend probably at least 300 times. The game is awesome, and the fact that you could change it from cartoon to comic mode, and it changed all the turtles into their like correct kind of shades, right? Where Donatello was brown and Michelangelo was teal, and it was awesome. And then obviously the lesser kind of known Hyperstone Heist was the game that I had, but it was essentially the same thing on Genesis, right? Where it was just, man, those games are so iconic. I mean, not just Turtles in Time, but even Turtles Tournament Fighter at the time too. It was like those games were so awesome, and just how big the Turtles were at the time, and those games were unmatched in terms of brawlers, I would argue. I mean, there might have been some that were up to the same level, but nothing surpassed Ninja Turtles.
During the 16-bit, if we're adding Genesis to the conversation, it was Turtles in Time and Streets of Rage 2. There was never a battle of which one was the best. Those two were the top tier best games in fighting. Even though Final Fight was out, Final Fight went through some revisions from the arcade.
Yeah.
Because they took out Poison and they put a guy to because Capcom didn't believe in beating up on women, even though you had Street Fighter.
Yeah.
So, and that whole narrative.
But I mean, even going back to Turtles real quick, like the bosses were so good. Like even the Baxter Stockman fight in the first area was awesome. Like, Leatherhead in the sewer, Rat King,
Right.
like Krang, like in both forms, Super Shredder, the stupid elevator level that everybody hated, but we all had to sit through. When you had to go fight Slash, when you went back in time, the pirate ship where you fought Bebop and Rocksteady.
Which Slash wasn't in the original game.
I know. And like when they released Turtles in Time Reshelled on Xbox 360, I got super excited, and it was the arcade version, which is the rare occasion where the console version is better than the arcade version, I would argue.
Yeah, because they had like some slime boss.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
It was I want to say Clayface, but that's a Batman villain. It was like it was the Turtles version of Clayface where he could kind of morph into whatever, right?
Yeah.
Also like the surfing levels, like when you're surfing through the sewer right before you fight Rat King, the yellow aliens, the pizza aliens.
Yes.
The kind of futuristic world, which really showed off the Mode 7, I would argue.
Mm-hmm.
There's so, like, every single level in that game is iconic and just so fun. And then obviously when you get to go to fight Shredder, like first he's in that machine and he, you kind of got to dodge like these laser things that he's shooting at you. And then you fight Super Shredder. It was awesome. That game is just so...
I needed help beating Super Shredder.
Oh shit! I was able to fight him with ease.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, we were playing. Me and my friend would play on the hardest difficulty with like 3 lives and play through without any continues. It was awesome.
Wow.
Yeah. The thing that made that game was being able to throw the foot soldiers into the TV screen.
Yep.
And you use that gameplay to beat Shredder.
Yeah.
in the machine.
And what's cool is like they are implementing that into the new game. The Shredder's Revenge.
Shredder's Revenge, yeah.
Which is cool because when you do them, you can like hit them like a foot, like all that you tackling and throw them. You can throw them like with your foot, or you have the animation of like swinging them around and throwing them.
Yeah. Also, they confirmed that the Cowabunga collection on Switch, you will be able to use the Genesis and the Super Nintendo controllers to play those games. So
that's awesome.
I am beyond excited to be playing that.
Yes. So that is Ninja Turtles. Another one, of course, is Chrono Trigger, and that was really with not just the time jumping mechanic, but it was being able to end the game wherever you wanted to get a certain ending. But the big thing was New Game Plus, and that helped.
Wasn't that the first game that ever had it? Or like
New Game Plus,
one of the first games that ever had New Game Plus.
Yes. Because in a lot of RPGs, you couldn't carry over all your information, all that grinding and hours that you spent. You couldn't carry over if you started a new game. But because it had so many endings and everything, you were able to start that game as powerful as you wanted to be. It could still continue to do it, to go up. Secret of Mana was a game planned for the Nintendo PlayStation. When plans got changed, Squaresoft had to strip everything and put it onto a cart. So that's why when you hear the music in that game, it has a different sound than everything else. It has a clearer sound with the music soundtrack. Is because they were somehow able to convert the music from the CD that they was going to put on to the cartridge.
Yeah.
So, and that's why they were supposed to also have cutscenes in it. So when you get to certain rooms that is blocked off that you can't go through, a cutscene was supposed to happen for it.
Well, and then they ended up putting those in the PlayStation version of Chrono Trigger, right? And it was not great. Like
the remake, I think. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't a remake. They just added all the cutscenes and put the digitized audio in it and made it sound better and put the cutscenes in, but like I guess the loading times were obnoxious and like it didn't play as well as the Super Nintendo version. Like, you know, and a lot of people were really mad when that game got ported to PlayStation because of that reason.
Yeah, I think, and that's why that Collection of Mana came out, and that's why Switch never got it. Or I think it's only on PlayStation 4 and PC. That game never came anywhere else.
What, the collection?
The remake, Secret of Mana.
Oh yeah, because version. I think they announced it for Switch and it never came because we got the Trials of Mana instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess that Secret of Mana remake was pretty decent.
Yeah, it was. Of course, Final Fantasy 3. For some people, Final Fantasy 6. That was a big RPG. On the Super Nintendo. ActRaiser was another one because it mixed sim and that music. Oh, that music is so good for ActRaiser.
I remember playing ActRaiser. It was a unique game of like you said, like a sim. It was like a god sim where you had to like protect this village and kind of build it up or whatever. And then like after each segment of building, you went through. And it was a side-scrolling action platformer.
Yes.
I can hear the sword hitting stuff in my head, like that shink, shink.
Yes.
That's not really the sound it made, but it's...
I remember Aladdin on Super Nintendo by Capcom. I still think it's better than the Genesis version, but I'm going to say the reason I say that is because I never played the Genesis version of Aladdin.
See, I only played the Genesis version. I never played the Super Nintendo version.
And see, I didn't know that version did it because I just know that Capcom had it. But Capcom wasn't a part. I think when it came out, Capcom wasn't a part of the Sega Genesis yet. Like,
no, I mean those were made by Virgin Interactive, right? So, like
for Genesis, it was. Capcom
that's what I'm saying.
Aladdin for Super Nintendo.
That's what I'm saying. All the Disney games were made by Virgin because you had the Lion King game, Jungle Book, Aladdin, Toy Story for Sega Genesis was interesting.
Castle Illusion was made by Sega, though.
Yeah,
but that
Great
was
game.
Based on a licensed movie or something like that.
No, I mean it was just Mickey Mouse, but so if you want to talk about a cool Mickey Mouse game on Super Nintendo, though, Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse was incredible. Like the whole, in each world, you kind of had to find a costume, and you use that costume's abilities to kind of solve puzzles and get through different areas of the level. But then as you progressed and got new costumes, like there were secrets that you could unlock using the old costumes from the other levels. It was really, really cool. And they made a version of it for Game Boy Advance where you could play as Minnie as well. And Minnie had different costumes and they added levels and stuff. It was really cool.
Aw, I wish I played that.
And like I remember the first level where like you would find these tomatoes, and like when you picked them, they like snapped off and became little helicopters that like flew you up. It was really weird.
Oh,
well, the first level was based on Jack and the Beanstalk, the Mickey and the Beanstalk cartoon.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah. And then like you got a fireman costume. There was the weird Peter Pan looking costume that I never really understood what it did. There were a lot of cool costumes in that game.
Yeah.
You know all the cool Disney games.
I know, because that's what I lived on for a long time.
Yeah. Konami had Tiny Toons and Batman Returns on Super Nintendo. Those games were good. Of course, Capcom had Mega Man X, which was fantastic. Now, I must say,
hold on. Before you continue, Ed, I just looked up because I was trying to look up the costumes for the Mickey game. I just found out that there are not one, not two, but 3 magical quests starring Mickey Mouse.
What?
And all of them are for Game Boy Advance. Oh my gosh, I just had a revelation.
Imagine
wow.
if that came out on NSO.
Oh my gosh. Capcom is the developer.
Okay.
I mean, it's not that far of a stretch. They released that Disney collection, right? They had the Disney Afternoon collection, and then they had the movie Lion King, Aladdin, Jungle Book collection.
That was oh. Okay. Maybe.
Anyways, continue. Sorry, I got super excited for
Aw.
30-year-old games.
SNK with their Neo Geo games. If people didn't know that, Neo Geo was a $600 machine that was able to do arcade, like literally arcade perfect graphics. The thing is, the cartridges were $200 per cartridge. So some of their games like Fatal Fury and Samurai Showdown came to the Super Nintendo. But the thing about it is, like, if you look at Samurai Showdown, they didn't have the zoom in feature that's in the Neo Geo version. Everything is far back for it. But a lot of their fighters were on Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. So people, you guys go check that out. Now it's time to have the discussion of one of the most controversial games on the system.
Is it? Dun 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 dun. Drum roll.
Mortal Kombat.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say Earthbound.
Oh.
No.
Okay, Mortal Kombat. Okay.
It was controversial because
Yeah.
of the violence and the fatalities.
Yes.
So when it came to Super Nintendo, when you hit them, you didn't see blood, you got sweat. But to have the sweat turn into blood, you needed the game genie for it in order to do it. Whereas Genesis, all you had to do was put in a code, and you were able to do the blood and fatalities. Now, after the Night Trap stuff happened and the ESRB came into play, Mortal Kombat 2 came out. And it was mature on both systems because the N-rated series and rating was on it. And it blew Sega away. Mortal Kombat 2 on Super Nintendo was the game for fighters that everybody was playing. Like it really put Acclaim in Midway in a good spotlight. Acclaim made so much money, and Midway made so much money from it that everybody who was playing Mortal Kombat 2 were playing on the Super Nintendo. The only reason why it was controversy was because they thought that kids will become murderers because the full version, the uncensored version, was on Super Nintendo or on Sega Genesis. But none of that like really happened or anything. Now, of course, we had games like Power Rangers that came on, which was a beat 'em up stuff. But then we also had games like Rama Half, which was a fighting game from an anime. We had the Addams Family by Ocean. You know, we kind of had like these B and C tier games that was kind of cool, but like completely forgotten.
What about, you're forgetting some pretty important games, Ed?
But of course, NBA Jam I mentioned, that was a big one. Zombie Ate My Neighbors was big for some people.
Yeah. Ghoul Patrol, which was the sequel to. You forgot Arrow the Acrobat.
Didn't nobody play Arrow the Acrobat?
I did. Arrow the Acrobat was cool.
By Sunsoft?
Sure, maybe. You forgot about Jurassic Park, which was far superior on Genesis.
I remember playing Bubsy.
Oh jeez, yeah, Bubsy, that gem.
Yeah, I beat it at my cousin's house. Stephanie, if you haven't heard of Bubsy, look it up. You would be like, "What the word?" It was a cat mascot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. There was also the 7-Up game where you play that Spot.
Cool Spot.
Food Spot, yes. Shaq Fu.
Yeah, Shaq
You was
Fu.
able to play.
That game's not racist at all. Neither is the new one at all.
Uh, Michael
Hold
Jordan
on.
in the
Can we talk about Shaq Fu, the new one, real quick, just for like 5 seconds?
Go ahead.
You know how I knew that game was going to be bad? When in the first like 5 seconds of the game, when there's like the still images of the cutscene and Shaq's like talking to his master, and then they show his master, and it's like literally a caricature of like what you would think of a Chinese kung fu master. He had like the really long white beard and the really long mustache.
Thin mustache.
But they also had like the hats, like the like the round
Straw hat.
yeah, and like these really long robes with like a dragon on them, but then also like the accent he was using was not necessarily I don't know. It was that game. That game was not popular enough for every outlet in the world to write about, I guess, but it was pretty. Shaq's cool though.
Man, there was a theme park by EA where you could make your own theme park and have orange roller coasters. That game wasn't good at all.
What game? Wait, what game?
Theme Park by EA.
Theme Park came to Super Nintendo?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea.
Yep. The Ninja Gaiden collection was there, where they literally ported the 8-bit version of those games, but put like a Super Nintendo soundtrack filter. So the graphics and the sound and the soundtrack don't match at all.
Yeah. Well. Anyways.
Stephanie, is there any games that I mentioned that you played?
Out of all of that, ironically, was Mortal Kombat. But again, my cousins, older boys, I wanted to fit in. I definitely saw lots and lots and lots of blood, and those fatalities gave me nightmares. But I sucked it up. I'm like, I want to play him, and I got so mad because my cousins would not tell me the combinations of those fatalities, and they kept killing me, and I got so mad. Chopping me in half, throwing me on an icicle.
Yeah.
Super Mario RPG I'm going to skip because I couldn't beat that game because of that stupid
We're going to
octopus.
skip it because Ed didn't beat it. We're just going to skip it.
Oh.
All these obscure Japanese games Ed played, but not
What? Super
Mario
Mario
RPG.
That was Nintendo Square.
I know. I'm just messing with you, Ed. So I mean, Super Nintendo.
It's an impressive catalog.
Yeah.
Like an impressive library, for sure.
We do have to consider ranking this thing now, though. Ed.
Yes.
Let's see.
Right, can someone remind me what the current ranking is?
I'm looking it up right now.
So Game Boy is number 1, NES is number 2.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you, Stephanie, and you, Corey, ranked it better than NES, so that outdid my vote.
Yeah. I mean, I think objectively, I think the Super Nintendo at this point is the best console.
Yes.
Agreed.
Yeah. I mean, you look at Super Mario World, you look at Zelda, so many. I think the games that made these franchises iconic are all the Super Nintendo games, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, yeah, Zelda 1 was iconic because it was like an open world kind of fantasy game, but then you think about Link to the Past and what it did about story and graphics and weapons and dungeons and the light and dark world, and then obviously you move to Super Metroid and Mario World. Like, I mean, I know Mario kind of became more iconic with Mario 3, but Super Mario World is like...
Well, yeah, Corey, and like I was saying, I think you'd stepped out. Like, when you're talking about Zelda, real quick, like, you're going to get two answers when someone says, what was your first and favorite Zelda game? And we're talking about kind of our generation. It's either Ocarina of Time or Link to the Past. So.
Yeah. And, I mean, even you look at the pantheon of Zelda games now, and you might still get that answer from people. I mean, Remember the other day, I texted you and LaRon and said, I just heard a bunch of kids talking about Ocarina of Time on Nintendo Switch. I'm like,
That
man,
made my
these
heart
kids.
feel warm and fuzzy.
Yeah. Man, that was so funny. Like, I'm like, oh man, I was there once like 20 years ago and you kids weren't even thought of. But yeah. I mean, I feel like it might be pretty unanimous here. Super Nintendo is number one.
Bro, no, yeah.
But
It's only gonna get it's gonna get more and more difficult, and it's funny because I feel bad because NES is now number 3, but I feel like as we're ranking all these systems, I mean, even being on the lower of the list, it's still a pretty damn good system.
Yeah, don't worry, the NES won't stay in last place for long. We got to talk about the Virtual Boy at some point.
That would only be like a 10-minute. That's an expansion pass.
That's the only Nintendo console I don't own. Is a Virtual Boy.
Yeah, same. I never owned or played a Virtual Boy.
I owned one, and then I sold it because I made some dumb decisions when I was younger, and I had to start getting rid of stuff, and that was like the one thing I didn't care about. And now it costs a fortune.
Yes.
Well, it should be an interesting debate when we get to the Wii U, because someone loves the Wii U so much.
Best console.
Sales say otherwise.
Well,
it's
you look,
only,
the 13 million people that bought a Wii U were right. Okay.
It's only going to get interesting because it's going to be a battle between Wii U versus GameCube.
No, I think it's going to be a battle I think Switch is going to be in that conversation.
No, Switch is not in that conversation.
Really? Okay.
You're the worst. You're fired. You are fired.
Prior to be rehired, like the
next. Stephanie, you're promoted.
What?
I don't know. I don't know.
I cannot take up that title. No way.
You just gotta act wild and crazy and eat weird
every
food.
single game.
Nah. Fair. Head, we're gonna have words later.
Oh,
Can't
boy.
believe you said that. Shocked.
Why?
Shocked.
Why?
Anyways, our definitive ranking right now: NES number 3, Game Boy number 2, Super Nintendo number 1. We will see how long it sits at that spot. Although I don't think it's going to take very long for that to shuffle its way down the list.
We have Game Boy Advance, we have DS, and the N64.
Yeah, all 3 of which I think are better than the Super Nintendo. Spoilers, I guess.
That's the debatable one.
And we're going to debate them on the next episode because we do not have time to do it now.
Yes. So with that, everybody, Stephanie, go ahead and plug.
Yeah, everyone can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Klimov, KLIMOV_author. I am on Boss Rush podcast Wednesday nights, and I'm a regular on After Dark, as well as Standard Definition for the Disney episodes.
Yes. Corey, where can we find you?
You can find me hosting the Boss Rush podcast. You can find me on Nintendo Pal Block. You can find me right here on Standard Definition. You can find me on After Dark, and there's something else I'm on.
You're on everything.
Yeah, let's be honest.
Besides Crossroads.
Well, I'm there sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, that's where you can find me.
And you guys can find me on Twitter at ThatRetroCode and Instagram at ThatRetroCode. You can check me out on Nintendo Power Block and Expansion Pass and other podcasts around the world. Just look me up. You'll be able to find me. With that, everybody, have a great week. Have a great weekend. And we'll see you next time on Standard Definition. Our next one, everybody, get ready. We are jumping to the Game Boy Advance.
Already?
Yes.
Oh, I thought we were going to do Nintendo 64 next. Okay.
No, Advance came first before N64.
That's not true.
What?
I
No.
Nah.
No, I gotta look this up now.
Yeah,
Game Boy Advance.
Please hold. Hold on.
Yeah. Please.
My realities.
No. It was released in Japan in March of 2001. 64 came out in 1996.
I thought Advance was next. Probably because I'm thinking that this system has so many Super Nintendo games and was like a mini Super Nintendo that I went to Advance.
Let's see. Yeah, Game Boy Advance came out on March 21st, 2001 in Japan and June 11th, 2001 in North America.
Well, I guess everybody, we are going to the N64, Nintendo 64.
No, that's gonna be where I'm gonna shine.
Yeah, that's gonna be it. That's gonna be an episode where I think we can all talk a lot. So.
You may be surprised. But with that, everybody, we will see you next time.
You don't have to be on that episode then, Ed. Okay? Stephanie and I will be like, 64.
I will. I'll be there. Trust me, I played a lot. I know.
Oh, that was my first, well, not counting Game Boys. It's my first console. My first real, I got some real memories. Like, for Super Nintendo, like I said, like, I played other people's games. This was my first console. I got to talk about how I got it. I get to talk. Okay, I better stop.
Whatever that. We'll see you guys next time. Instead of edition. Bye, everybody.
Bye.